I live my life in 3 by 3 inch squares of pastel paper. My entire existence is color-coded. Yellow notes are for urgent deadlines. Blue notes are for long-term projects. Green notes are for my personal errands, which usually just consist of buying more frozen dinners or remembering to water the fern that is slowly dying on my windowsill. And then there are the pink notes. The pink notes are dangerous. The pink notes are the ones I am supposed to shred immediately after writing them. They are my therapy, my venting mechanism, my secret diary scattered across my desk in adhesive squares. I write down the things I am too terrified to say out loud, and then I destroy them. It is a system that has worked perfectly for 3 years. It kept me sane while working as the executive assistant to Evelyn Vance. Evelyn Vance is not just a boss. She is an entity. She is 42 years of age, and she has built one of the most successful creative agencies in New York from the ground up. She is known in the industry as the Ice Queen because she never raises her voice and she never smiles unless it is that terrifying, sharp smile she uses right before she destroys a competitor. She is beautiful in a way that makes your stomach hurt. Sharp cheekbones and dark hair that is always pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that are so dark they look like ink. She scares everyone. She scares me too, but not in the way she scares everyone else. She scares me because every time she looks at me, I feel like she can see every thought inside my head. And for the last 6 months, the only thoughts inside my head have been about her. That is why I write the pink notes. I write them to get the thoughts out of my head so I can focus on her schedule and her coffee order. I write things like, stop looking at her lips, or she smells like sandalwood and power, or get a grip. Maya, you are 26 years old. I write them and I ball them up and I throw them in the shredder. It is efficient. I am efficient. Evelyn values efficiency above all else. It was a Tuesday morning when the system failed. It was the morning of the quarterly presentation for the Meridian account. The entire board was coming. The atmosphere in the office was so tense you could snap it in half. Evelyn was in rare form. She was pacing her office and dictating emails to me at a speed that would make a court stenographer weep. I was juggling 2 tablets and a stack of files and my own rising panic. I had arrived early to prepare the room, but I was still vibrating with anxiety. I had written a note, a pink note. It was the boldest one I had ever written. I had been practicing her signature next to mine like a love-struck teenager, and underneath it I had written 5 words. Evelyn, I love you. Maya. Then I had crossed it out. And underneath that I wrote, love is not efficient, but it is necessary. It was a stupid line I had read in a poem, but it felt true. I heard her heels clicking down the hallway. The sound was distinctive, sharp and rhythmic and fast. I panicked. I ripped the pink note off the pad. I meant to crumple it up and shove it in my pocket to destroy later. But my hands were shaking and I was holding too many files. The door swung open and Evelyn swept into the room. She was wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit her perfectly, and her presence filled the space instantly. She looked at me and asked if the projections were ready. Her voice was cool and calm. I dropped the files on the desk and scrambled to organize them. In the chaos, I lost track of the pink note. I assumed it had fallen into the trash bin, or maybe under the desk. I did not have time to look. We walked to the conference room together. She was reviewing her opening remarks, and I was walking half a step behind her, ensuring the path was clear. We entered the boardroom. 12 older men in expensive suits were sitting around the mahogany table. They all stood up when Evelyn entered. She commanded the room without saying a word. I took my seat in the corner, ready to take minutes and handle the slide deck. Evelyn walked to the front of the room. She turned to face them. She looked impeccable. She looked powerful. And then I saw it. My blood turned into ice in my veins. My heart stopped beating. The world tilted on its axis. Stuck to the bottom of her right heel was a square of neon pink paper. It was bright against the red sole of her Louboutin pump. It was glaring. It was impossible to miss if you were looking at her feet, and I was staring at her feet in horror. I sat there frozen. I could not breathe. I could see my handwriting from here. The bold loops of the letters, the words, I love you. It was right there. I had to do something. I had to tell her. But she was already speaking. She was launching into the opening pitch about market volatility and brand resilience. If I interrupted her now, I would ruin her flow. I would embarrass her in front of the board. But if she walked around and one of the board members saw it, she would be the laughingstock of the meeting. Or worse. She would look down and see it herself. I tried to get her attention. I cleared my throat softly. She did not look at me. She was pacing slowly back and forth. Step, click, step, click. The pink note held on for dear life. It fluttered slightly with every step she took. I was praying to every deity I didn't believe in. Please let it fall off. Please let the adhesive fail. Please let it detach and slide under the table where no one will see it. But 3M makes an excellent product. The note stayed stuck. Evelyn turned her back to the board to point at the projection screen. She lifted her right foot slightly to pivot. The note was now facing the entire board of directors. I squeezed my eyes shut. I waited for the laughter. I waited for someone to point it out. But no one did. They were all looking at the graph on the screen. Or maybe they were too polite to mention that the CEO had trash on her shoe. I opened my eyes. Evelyn turned back around. She continued her presentation. She was brilliant. She was incisive. And she was walking around with a declaration of love from her assistant stuck to her shoe. The meeting lasted for 90 minutes. It was 90 minutes of pure psychological torture. I sweated through my blouse. I gripped my pen so hard my knuckles turned white. Every time she moved, I flinched. Finally, she wrapped up the presentation. The board members nodded in approval. They were impressed. Evelyn smiled that tight, controlled smile. She walked towards the door. I jumped up to open it for her. As she passed me, she paused. She looked at me. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She asked me why I looked like I was about to vomit. I stammered. I said I was just feeling a little under the weather. She looked at me for a long second. Then she turned and walked out. I looked down at the floor. The pink note was gone. I scanned the carpet frantically. It wasn't there. It wasn't under the table. It wasn't near the podium. I felt a wave of nausea. If it wasn't on the floor, that meant it was still on her shoe. Or worse, it had fallen off in the hallway, or in her office, or she had seen it. I spent the rest of the day in a state of high-functioning paranoia. I avoided her office. I sent emails instead of going in person. I flinched every time my phone rang. I was waiting for the summons. I was waiting to be fired. I was waiting for her to tell me that I was unprofessional and pathetic and that I needed to clear out my desk. But the call never came. The office was quiet. Evelyn stayed in her office with the door closed for most of the afternoon. When she finally left for the day, she didn't say goodbye to me. She just walked past my desk without looking. I watched her go. I wondered if that was the last time I would see her as my boss. Wednesday came and went. She acted normal, cold and efficient and distant. Thursday was the same. By Friday, I started to believe that maybe I had hallucinated the whole thing. Maybe the note had fallen off in the hallway and the cleaning crew had swept it up. Maybe she had stepped on it and never looked at the bottom of her shoe and it had worn off on the sidewalk. I started to breathe again. I told myself I was safe. I told myself to never write a pink note again as long as I lived. Then came the Monday morning staff meeting. We were discussing the new slogan for the luxury car account we had just landed. The creative team was pitching ideas. Everything felt stale. Evelyn was shooting down concepts with efficient brutality. She was bored. She was leaning back in her chair, tapping her pen against the table. The room was silent after she rejected the 10th idea. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the room. She said that we were thinking too logically. She said we were trying to sell efficiency when we should be selling emotion. She stood up and walked to the whiteboard. She picked up a marker. She wrote a sentence on the board in her sharp, angular handwriting. Love isn't efficient, but it's necessary. She capped the marker. She turned around. The room was silent. The creative director nodded slowly and said it was brilliant. He asked where she came up with it. Evelyn didn't look at him. She looked directly at me. She stared right into my eyes. Her expression was unreadable. It wasn't angry. It wasn't mocking. It was intense. It was challenging. She said she found inspiration in the most unexpected place. I stopped breathing. The air left my lungs and refused to return. She knew. She absolutely knew. That was my sentence. Those were the words I had written on the pink note. The note I had lost. The note that had been stuck to her shoe. She had found it. She had read it. She knew I loved her. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I wanted to disappear. I waited for her to say my name. I waited for her to mock me. But she didn't. She just held my gaze for another second, and then looked away. She told the team to build the campaign around that concept. She told them to explore the idea that the things we need the most are rarely the things that make sense on paper. The rest of the meeting was a blur. I sat there frozen in my chair. My mind was racing. Why hadn't she fired me? Why was she using my words? Was this a game? Was she mocking me silently? Was she enjoying the power she had over me? It felt cruel. It felt like she was playing with her food before eating it. After the meeting, everyone filed out. I tried to leave quickly, but she called my name. Maya. I stopped at the door. I turned around slowly. She was still sitting at the head of the table. She was looking at some papers. She didn't look up. She asked me to stay for a moment. The door clicked shut. We were alone. The silence was heavy. I stood by the door, clutching my tablet to my chest like a shield. She finally looked up. She took off her glasses. She looked tired, but she also looked electric. She asked me what I thought of the new slogan. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry. I said I thought it was very strong. She nodded. She stood up and walked around the table. She came closer to me. She stopped a few feet away. She was wearing the same perfume she always wore, sandalwood and something floral that I could never identify. It smelled like expensive comfort. She asked me if I believed it. I asked her what she meant. She asked if I believed that love was necessary even if it wasn't efficient. I looked at her. I was terrified, but I was also exhausted from the hiding. I decided to tell the truth, or at least a version of it. I said yes. I said that efficiency is good for business, but humans aren't businesses. We are messy. We need things that don't make sense. She stepped closer. She was now inside my personal space. I could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. She said that she had built her entire life on efficiency. She said she had eliminated everything that didn't serve a purpose. She said she thought she was happy. I didn't know what to say. I stayed silent. She looked at me with that soul-reading gaze. She said that sometimes things get stuck to us and we don't realize we are carrying them around until we stop to look. My heart hammered against my ribs. She was talking about the note. She was telling me she found it without saying she found it. She told me to go back to my desk. She said she needed the schedule for the gala finalized by the end of the day. I fled the room. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall and hyperventilated for 5 minutes. The weeks leading up to the gala were a different kind of torture. It wasn't the torture of fear anymore. It was the torture of tension. Evelyn didn't fire me. She didn't bring up the note again. But everything had changed. She started keeping me late, not for work. We would finish the work and then she would just talk. She would ask me about my life. She asked me what books I was reading. She asked me why I always wore blue. She asked me what I wanted to do with my life. And she listened. She really listened. She watched me while I spoke like I was the most interesting puzzle she had ever tried to solve. And there were the looks. During meetings, I would catch her watching me. When I handed her coffee, our fingers would brush and she wouldn't pull away immediately. She would let the contact linger for a second too long. It was electric. It was confusing. It was driving me insane. I knew about the policy. Evelyn had written the employee handbook herself. Page 42, paragraph 3. Zero tolerance policy for inter-office relationships between supervisors and subordinates. It was a firing offense. No exceptions. She was the one who enforced it. She was the one who fired the VP of sales last year for dating his secretary. So I knew this couldn't be real. I knew she couldn't want me. Because Evelyn Vance did not break rules. She made them. I convinced myself she was just lonely. I convinced myself she saw me as a protege. I convinced myself that the note was just a funny anecdote she had already forgotten. The night of the gala arrived. It was a black tie event at a hotel in Midtown. I was wearing a navy blue dress that I had spent way too much money on. I was nervous. I was there to work. I had a headset and a clipboard, and I was responsible for making sure the donors were happy and the champagne was flowing. Evelyn arrived an hour late. When she walked in, the room went quiet. She was wearing a black velvet gown that hugged every curve. It was off the shoulder. Her neck was bare. She looked devastating. She looked like a queen. She scanned the room. She wasn't looking for the donors. She wasn't looking for the board members. She was looking for someone. Her eyes landed on me. She stopped. She stared at me across the crowded ballroom. For a moment, there was no one else in the room. Just her and me. The look on her face was raw. It wasn't the Ice Queen. It was the woman underneath. She started walking towards me. She ignored the people trying to stop her. She walked straight to me. She stopped in front of me. She looked me up and down. Her eyes darkened. She told me I looked inefficient. I laughed. It was a nervous, breathless laugh. I asked her if that was a bad thing. She stepped closer. She lowered her voice. She said that tonight she didn't care about efficiency. A donor came up to us then. A wealthy man who had been trying to get Evelyn's attention all night. He put his hand on Evelyn's arm. He tried to pull her away. Evelyn looked at his hand on her arm like it was a contagious disease. She removed it gently but firmly. She told him she was in the middle of a very important conversation. She turned her back on him. She turned back to me. She asked me to meet her in the library upstairs in 10 minutes. It wasn't a request. It was an order. I went to the library. It was quiet and dim. The party was a dull roar downstairs. I waited. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what was happening. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. The door opened and Evelyn walked in. She locked the door behind her. The click of the lock sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. She walked towards me. She didn't stop until she was a breath away. She asked me if I meant it. I asked her what. She asked if I meant what I wrote. I couldn't lie anymore. The game was over. I nodded. I said yes. I said I meant every word. She let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for weeks. She closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, they were wet. She told me she was terrified. She said she had never broken a rule in her life. She said she didn't know how to do this. She said she was older than me and she was my boss and she was complicated and difficult. I told her I didn't care. I told her I didn't want simple. I wanted her. She reached out and touched my face. Her hand was warm. Her thumb traced my cheekbone. She looked at me like I was something precious, like I was something she was afraid to break. She leaned in. I closed my eyes. But she didn't kiss me. She pulled back. She stepped away. She turned her back to me. She said we couldn't. She said the policy. She said she couldn't ask me to risk my career. She said she couldn't lose the company she built. She said it was a mistake. She unlocked the door and left. I stood there alone in the library. I felt like I had been hollowed out. I felt like the sticky note had been ripped off my heart and took the skin with it. I went home. I cried. I decided to quit. I couldn't work for her anymore. I couldn't be near her and know that she wanted me but chose the rules instead. I went to the office the next morning. It was Sunday. The office was empty. I went to pack my desk. I wanted to be gone before Monday morning. I wanted to leave a resignation letter and disappear. I was putting my personal items in a box. The dying fern, my favorite mug, my pads of sticky notes. I heard a door open. I looked up. Evelyn was standing in the doorway of her office. She was wearing jeans and a sweater. I had never seen her in casual clothes. She looked soft. She looked tired. She saw the box on my desk. She saw what I was doing. She walked over to me. She put her hand on the box. She stopped me. She asked me what I was doing. I told her I was leaving. I told her I couldn't stay. I told her that efficiency had won. She shook her head. She took the box from my hands and put it on the floor. She told me to come with her. She led me into her office. She walked behind her massive glass desk. She sat down in her chair. She opened the bottom drawer, the one that was always locked, the one I assumed held sensitive financial documents or legal files. She pulled the drawer open. She looked at me. She told me to look. I walked around the desk. I looked into the drawer. I stopped breathing again. It wasn't empty. And it wasn't full of documents. It was full of paper. Squares of paper. Pink, yellow, blue, green. There were hundreds of them. Crumbled up balls of paper that had been smoothed out. Torn pieces that had been taped back together. I reached in and picked one up. It was blue. It was from 6 months ago. She looks sad today. I wish I could make her laugh. I picked up another one. Yellow. From 3 months ago. Her coffee order is wrong. The barista burned the milk. I should go get her another one. I picked up a pink one. From last week. I miss her even when she is sitting right in front of me. I looked at Evelyn. I was in shock. I asked her how. She said I wasn't as efficient with the shredder as I thought I was. She said she found the first one by accident in the recycling bin. She said she was curious. She said she started looking for them. She said she used to wait until I went to lunch and she would check my trash can. She said she saved every single one. She said she had been reading my thoughts for months. She said she fell in love with me through these notes. She said she fell in love with the way I cared about her, the way I worried about her, the way I saw her when no one else did. She reached into the drawer and pulled out the neon pink note, the one from the shoe. The edges were dirty from the floor. She placed it on the desk between us. She said she kept waiting for me to give one to her. She said she kept waiting for me to be brave enough to say it to her face. She said finding this one on her shoe felt like a sign. She said she tried to ignore it. She tried to stick to the rules. But last night she realized something. She stood up. She walked around the desk to stand in front of me. She said she realized that rules are just efficient ways to avoid living. She said she didn't want to be efficient anymore. She wanted to be necessary. She asked me if I was still quitting. I looked at the drawer full of my secrets. I looked at the woman who had collected them, the woman who had treasured my silly, anxious thoughts like they were diamonds. I shook my head. I said I wasn't quitting. She smiled. It wasn't the sharp smile. It was a real smile. It reached her eyes. It made her look 10 years younger. She took a step closer. She took my face in her hands again. She said good, because she would hate to have to fire her girlfriend on the first day. I laughed. I was crying, but I was laughing. I asked her about the policy. Page 42, paragraph 3. She shrugged. She said she was the CEO. She could rewrite the handbook. She said she would issue a memo on Monday morning, an amendment to the policy regarding exceptions for necessary love. Then she kissed me. It wasn't efficient. It was messy and long and breathless. It was chaotic. It was everything I had written on those notes and everything I hadn't found the words for yet. She tasted like coffee and expensive lipstick and relief. When we finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. She looked down at the desk. She picked up a pad of sticky notes. She picked up a pen. She wrote something. She peeled it off and stuck it to my shirt, right over my heart. I looked down. In her sharp, angular handwriting, she had written 3 words. I love you. I looked up at her. She kissed me again. I still use sticky notes. I still color code my life. But now I don't shred the pink ones. I stick them on her bathroom mirror. I stick them on her steering wheel. I stick them on her coffee mug. And she keeps every single one. She has a new drawer at home. It is getting full. And every time I see a piece of neon pink paper stuck to something in our apartment, I don't feel panic anymore. I feel seen. I feel known. And mostly I feel loved.